All right, what's up, guys? Before we dive into the second half of this podcast episode, I did want to open with some clarifying remarks just to expand on what we were talking about throughout the podcast and add some additional information that I think is important for everyone to check out. The first thing I'm going to say is that if you want a really good in-depth breakdown of everything that was covered at the USAP Media Day, I will have a link in the description that will take you to speakpickleball.com. This is one of the other media people that were at the event, and they did an absolutely incredible write-up of everything that happened there. In fact, I'm extremely impressed they managed to distill all of the information so well, because at this event, we talked for 6 or 7 hours and a lot of topics that are reasonably complex, and they did a great job breaking all of it down to the bits of information that you need, along with a lot of direct quotes. I really don't think you're going to find a better breakdown than this, so if you are interested in this topic at all, I would highly recommend you go and check out that article in the description. Now, the other thing I want to talk about really quickly is the Ripple situation. We do talk about that in this podcast, but I think one thing everyone needs to ultimately understand is that no one except for USAP and Ronbus know exactly what happened. The only people who know what paddles they have received and what paddles they have sent are those two parties. So really, the only thing anyone can do in the public is speculate based on the statements that were made. And their statements do contradict a little bit. So who's telling the truth and who did things completely properly? No one really knows, to be honest. I guess we'll just see how it shakes out, but I think it is important to understand that in this situation, a lot of this is just going to be speculation. Now, the other thing I took away from this USAP Media Day is that this job just isn't easy. I mean, look at it. We have two governing bodies at the moment. You have UPAA, which is just for the pros, and then you have USAP, which is trying to govern, paddles for the entire sport. And no one has been able to figure out how to perfectly do these tests. Even with UPAA, they've promised a lot of different timelines, and they just keep getting pushed back further and further. That's not a criticism of them, but that's just to say that this testing is not easy to figure out. I think if it was easy, we probably would have come to a conclusion by now. Now, of course, even though it's tough, that doesn't mean people aren't going to have criticisms or be upset that the pace things are going. I think a lot of people share that frustration and wish things were going faster. But I do understand and recognize that this is not an easy thing to figure out. Also, interestingly enough, I'm not going to go in depth on this, but at least what I know of UPAA's testing and USAP's, I'm actually really surprised at the similarities of testing that they're doing. They're both aiming for a PBCoR test. Now, they do have some differences in how they're approaching that in terms of the ball and other things. And then even the RPM test that USAP teased at the media day sounds very similar to what I know of UPAA's. So I find it very interesting that they're butting heads so hard when ultimately it seems like they're going in a very similar direction for testing, even if they do have minor differences in the approach that they take to do that test. Another thing you might be wondering while you listen to this episode is, why weren't more brands invited to the media day? And I can't tell you. I have no idea how people got picked. Honestly, this event came together very quickly. I think I mentioned it in the podcast. But I got an invite about 9 days before the event happened, which isn't exactly a lot of notice, and I think there were even some brands who had a shorter notice than me. But at least in terms of doing this event at Element US Space and Defense, which is where the testing lab is, we probably couldn't have had that many more people. We probably had around 30-ish people, and that was bordering too many people for the size that we had. So there's no way you were going to fit 1,800 manufacturers in there, or even 100 manufacturers. Now, I do think they should have opened up an online event so that everyone could attend, because I think there were a lot of things said in that meeting that would be good for a lot of manufacturers to hear. And now the only way they're going to hear about it is through these various podcasts or blog articles, which to me isn't fair to all of the brands. So I do hope that in the future, USAP has a better way to include all of the brands, because I think whether you're small or medium sized, a lot of this information would be relevant to you. Now, the two last things I'm going to say are, one, I think a lot of the issue comes down to communication from USAP. It felt like almost every manufacturer in that room had complaints with how quickly USAP responds to them. There are brand owners in my Discord that are constantly saying, we can't get a hold of anyone at USAP. And now look, 1,800 manufacturers, I understand. That's a lot of people to keep up with. But you guys have to hire more staff or people who can take some of that load off rather than just a couple people who can respond to those emails. Because with that many manufacturers, you just have to find a better way to keep up. I don't think it's fair to leave people on red for, a month at a time or a couple weeks at a time. Like, something has to be done to communicate better with the manufacturers. And then I also think there needs to be better public communication from USAP to the broader community, because a lot of the issues I think stem from USAP making a decision, not really announcing it or explaining it anywhere, and then maybe the manufacturer explains it, and then people just start speculating. And I think that's how a lot of these rumors get started, and it just gets really out of hand. But I feel like if USAP came out and said, hey, here's what happened with this paddle, and here's why we made this decision very quickly, or the same day that that decision was made, it would be extremely helpful, and I think limit a lot of the rumors going around, because I feel like with this Ripple situation, that's exactly what happened. There was a ton of rumors circulating after it got announced that it didn't pass the new testing, and a lot of different people had fingers pointed at them for like, oh, you're to blame, or this person did something wrong. And then when we got the statement from USAP, a lot of that wasn't true. So I really hope that USAP in the future will communicate better with the public. And then the last thing I want to mention is that I did get a follow-up email from USAP shortly after the event, and I thought it was really important to include in this podcast, because one of my biggest criticisms that you're going to hear me talk about was the lack of willingness to do degradation testing or destructive testing. And when I say those words, what I really mean is break-in testing. What we want to know is that a paddle's not going to break in and continue to get hotter and hotter and then go above the 0.43 PBCoR limit. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about that shortly. But one thing that they did email that I think is going to help just as much as that, maybe not fully, but should help a little bit, was in regards to manufacturers evading testing. They said, we are aware that some manufacturers are intentionally designing products to pass certification but fail to meet our standards over time. USA Pickleball is working diligently to implement strict penalties for those who deliberately circumvent our testing protocols. Details on these enforcement measures will be made public soon. Now, what soon means from USAP, I don't actually know. But I do think that implementing a fines and penalty system for people who go out of spec, and if they actually follow it and they don't give passes to different people, that is going to help a significant amount and may even limit the need for break-in testing, because then at that point, the manufacturer is going to go, man, I have to build a paddle that stays in spec because I don't want to pay $250,000, $100,000 for a penalty. And anyways, you'll hear us talk a little bit about that later, but I was very happy that USAP acknowledged it and emailed that out, because I do think that's going to be important moving forward. But anyways, I just wanted to add those notes in here because I think it helps add some clarifying statements about what you guys are about to hear. All right, here we go, guys. Meaty news. So I went to a USAP media day. This was kind of last minute. I think it was in Hawaii, and I got an email that said, hey, there's going to be a USAP media day in 9 days or something. And I wasn't going to go because I was in Hawaii, then I went to Florida, and then this would have been literally right after Florida. So I just thought, I'm not going to go. And then the whole idea was invite people in, some manufacturers and media, which was just ended up being podcasters, basically. I was there, Braden was there, John Q, Pickleball Tech Dude, and then John from Speak Pickleball was there. Was the media. So I was like, okay, this is important. I should go because there's a lot going on with testing. And I'm very, 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 very glad that I went, because I think there's a lot of important stuff to cover. Before we get into all this, I want to be clear. I think the people at USAP have good intentions, and I think they even have smart people. But it's, to me, in the conversations we had, it feels as if there's these blind spots that USAP doesn't want to acknowledge that exist. Or maybe they're even aware that it exists, but they just don't want to do something about it. The impression I kept getting was everyone in this room agrees except USAP. I mean, let me think of the brands that were there. Selkirk had a rep. Yola had 2 people. Adidas had a guy there. Onyx, Holbrook. Oh man, who else? Gearbox. Rafa from Gearbox was there. And I think there's a couple people that I'm forgetting from Paddle Tech was there, Curtis. So anyways, everyone in that room agreed. There was not a manufacturer in there that went, hey, I don't like what they're saying. I disagree with them. Literally everyone in that room agreed, including media, everyone. Okay.
Wow.
And then just another basic thing that I saw online that not a lot of people seem to understand. I saw a lot of people in different places saying USAP needs to use a third-party lab. They got to stop being the one to test. They do use a third-party lab. Element Space and Defense, formerly they were NTS, so they do use a third-party lab. And their lab is impressive. They do a lot of things in there. Ballistics, softball, baseball, a lot of things in that lab. It's not USAP owns that lab and runs it. So it is a third-party lab running everything. Okay? All right. First, I'm going to go over some PBCoR stuff. PBCoR, throughout January, as companies were getting more of their results in finally, was throwing out some really wacky numbers. I was asked by brands not to share their numbers, and I think you guys are going to see that very frequently, that brands don't want to share their number, but there were control paddles that were testing higher than that same brand's power paddle. And I promise you, if you handed 10 people that paddle, minimum 9 out of 10 are going to agree what the more powerful one is.
Mm-hmm.
So in real world application, it's very odd that control paddles are testing higher. Not by a lot, but it's higher.
Just doesn't make sense.
Shouldn't happen.
We've talked about this.
It's
just
confusing.
It makes zero sense.
Okay, so that's really odd. PBCoR doesn't really seem to be always a guaranteed representative of the real world, how people perceive that paddle.
Yeah.
As we're seeing with the control and power paddle results. I think the test itself, seeing it in person, I think it has validity, but I think there's small things that they need to fix or look a little deeper into to have perfect accuracy. Throughout the test, the manufacturers, as we're being shown, would go, hey, what about this? Like, how tight are you clamping this? Or what about this type of handle style? What if it's a stiffer handle versus a handle that has more of a foam pallet? Don't you think that'll impact when the ball hits the paddle? And the answers were kind of, it could, but we don't think it influences enough. But we heard that throughout enough things that just makes you go, okay, you've said that for 4 different things now. Do you not think that 4 different small things might be enough to throw a paddle through a pass or fail? You know, at one point they did say, look, we will keep evolving and perfecting this test. But my thought at that point is, why are you putting this test out now if it's not ready? What if in a year, a paddle you passed fails because of a small tweak you made?
That was going to be a question of mine, is did it get to talk about like why there's being issues with the testing or inconsistencies? Why they think it's not ready, or at least we think it's not?
People pointed out, the manufacturers who have a lot more knowledge pointed out some inconsistencies, and then USAP would usually give their rebuttal of why they thought it was fine. I recorded the vast majority of this trip so that I could reference it. I have probably 3 or 4 hours of record time. So before this podcast, I wasn't able to go through all 3 or 4 hours because there's really only about 2 points from this thing that I think are really important. All this PBCoR stuff and technical things, I think to the consumer is not going to matter that much. I think manufacturers in USAP will potentially figure out more things, but that to me is the least of the problem. But I wanted to go over that there's clearly some inconsistencies in PBCoR. Here was the biggest issue that everyone in the room agreed with. They need some form of degradation testing or breakdown testing to see what the lifespan of these paddles are or how they act. Because you do PBCoR when the paddle is brand new. We'll take a mod, for example, because everyone understands this. If you take a mod when it's brand new, let's say it passes PBCoR.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all know that paddle heats up. And let's say it was at, I'm making up a number here, let's say it was at 0.43, pass. After it breaks in, what if it's a 0.47? Then what? So that was one of my questions was, okay, cool, guys. You made a test that seems to have some very cool technical aspects to it. You developed something, let's just say it's awesome. But you're not testing for the thing that actually fixes the main problem we have, which is paddles breaking in and getting hotter and exceeding the test that you're using to slow the game down. So the mod did that. The gearbox did that. I mean, that J2K Plus will heat up. I don't know that it exceeds a limit. The Ripple, the first one we got, heated up. So it's like, okay, cool, they passed your test initially, but what about after? And their answer every single time we asked that question was, we expect the manufacturer to ensure that that paddle will stay in compliance for the duration of the life of the paddle. They said it's not our job to do that. It is the manufacturer. And it was either my question or maybe Rafa from Gearbox basically said, but do you not understand that companies right now in the state of the game are incentivized to produce power paddles? People want power paddles. They've seen the mod. They want power. They want power. Power, spin. So it's like they couldn't wrap their head around why people would want to exceed the number. They just kept going, well, why would you want to go out of compliance? And it's, well, look, if it hits this hot, people want to buy more of it. The Gearbox, the mod, the Ripple, everyone wants to buy these because they're powerful and exciting and they're fun. And so that was my point the whole time, was just there is a reason for people to do this, and it's like you guys don't understand that that's a reason that exists.
It just seems so interesting to me that they like, okay, they bring in all these companies, they bring in all this media to like, I guess I didn't see any emails of like talking about the event and people coming in, but it just seems like instead of like them trying to get feedback on testing and stuff, there's just more them telling you what it is and not wanting to change or do anything about it.
So I'm glad you bring that up, because I don't think that there was really any intention of, hey, we want feedback. I think what this really was supposed to be was, hey, we've kind of solidified our testing. We're going to bring everyone in. We're going to show you what it is and kind of express to you, like, look, we're not idiots that have no idea what they're doing. There are smart people there. Like I said at the beginning of this, I genuinely believe there are smart people. I just think there's some blind spots that they're ignoring or not willing to acknowledge. But I feel like it was, hey, we're going to show you. We've got a cool test. We're smart. But I feel like what happened was they got questioned, and then I don't know that they were fully ready for some of those questions, and they weren't very receptive to the questions. They did keep saying, look, we're open to this. It's not like they said, hey, we can't talk about that. They never did that.
Right.
They were actually very open about a lot of things. It's just that when pressed about, you should do this testing, they would say either that's too hard or there's not really a great way to do it. And then the manufacturers kept saying, I've got a test that can do this. I can literally give it to you to show you how to do this type of testing, or we think this is how you could do it. And they just kind of, USAP would go, we don't think everyone will agree. Or if, let's say we do a degradation test. This was one of their examples. Let's say we design it at 1,500 hits on the paddle. You guys are just going to design your paddle to break down at 2,000 hits. Or if we do 2,000, you're going to design it to break down at 2,500. And they would say, well, what are you going to do about Gen 1 paddles, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 6? How are you going to account that they all break down differently? And basically every manufacturer's answer was, that's your job. That's what you signed up to do, was to figure these things out.
Yeah. Now, see, my problem with this is like, okay, they're just saying, oh, well, you're just going to do it anyways and figure out a way. But isn't some level of deterrence better than nothing?
Exactly.
Like me putting on bug spray doesn't mean I'm never going to get bit by a bug. It's just better than nothing.
Yeah.
Or like sunscreen. Doesn't mean I'm not going to get burned, but it's going to stop some of that process, right? Like, so it's like, why are you just not doing anything or ignoring it?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So are they very set in their ways and like, okay, PBCoR this is how it is, and we're moving forward, like we think it's done.
Yeah, I mean it's already live. They're moving forward with it.
Right. But they're like, we don't want to change anything about it.
I wouldn't say that it's we will never change anything about it. I think there are small things they will continue to improve. And they made it sound like we're not going to do any degradation testing. Like that's just kind of off the table. To me, that misses the entire point, because USAP should and let's talk about the degradation
well,
testing
real quick,
for a sec.
my thing is like, okay, some companies saying, hey, we have a test, we'll give it to you, do this, and them saying, oh, well, not everyone's going to agree. Again, isn't most people agreeing and some not better than just no one being happy?
Right. Which
what?
No one in that room was happy. So
Dude.
The thing to me, obviously a Gen 1 will break down differently than a Gen 2, Gen 3.
Right.
Everyone's point in the room was, yes, you're going to have to group these by design type. Group them by Gen 3, group them by Gen 2, group them by Gen 1, and see kind of what the curve is. To me, I would think you would want to know, I'm going to take Gen 3 as an example because it's an easy example. If as you beat on this paddle, if you see the curve go like this, that sets off some alarm bells that goes, maybe we might want to reconsider whether this should be in the market because it's heating up very fast and starting to exceed the limit versus a Gen 1. You might see it just go down, or maybe it just stays level the entire time. To me, it's more about sending off some sirens that, if we put that in the market, we might have to come back a year from now and delist it because all of them are out of spec. And I think that's what everyone wants to avoid. The consumer doesn't want a delisting. The manufacturer doesn't want a delisting. And USAP certainly doesn't want to delist paddles. No one wants it. So
it's not good for anyone.
So to me, something to give a hint that this might happen is better than finding out in the market, everyone's telling me that breaks, let's take a closer look. That to me is the problem with that. Let me read through my notes here because there's a lot.
I just wonder why, like, this is going to sound harsh, but ignorance towards it. Like, why not just be like, okay, well, we'll look into it. At least, think about it. Like, maybe you don't. Maybe you really don't want to do this or you believe you shouldn't. But at least be like, okay, we'll spend some time looking into it.
That I felt the same way.
Instead of just saying to these people, no, that's not our job. You do it.
Yeah.
That just seems like the wrong approach, in my opinion.
I agree. And they may be right. Maybe they're right that if we do this, there is no way to fully capture it and people are still going to find a way to cheat. And maybe USAP is 100% right. But to me, the pushback of just saying, no, you guys are wrong was the wrong approach. Like you could say, look, we'll look into it. We're not convinced, but we'll take a look and see what happens. And then maybe we all find out USAP is right. That's fine. But to me, to just blow it off.
I just think I think a lot of people, at least people I've talked to, were in a collective agreement that pickleball paddle-wise has been in a poor trajectory for the sport. It's not like we've moved towards a lot of power. A lot of people I talked to agree that that's not good for the sport. Now, doing absolutely nothing to stop that is just going to make it worse, right? We're just going to see that curve keep going up. But if you at least try something, even if you don't believe it's going to work, is better than better than nothing.
Well, now it's just a new problem, right? So deflection was what was meant to catch power before. That is clearly insufficient.
Yes.
PBCoR, I think, is, and a lot of the manufacturers I felt agreed, will do a much better job of catching those paddles and keeping them off the market.
Mm-hmm.
Now the challenge is break-in. Can manufacturers design it where it's more rigid and will pass PBCoR and then go up? So it's kind of just a new issue is really the problem. It's like they need multiple tests to kind of catch some of these. But to me, and I think I referenced this a minute ago, but it was just interesting that USAP didn't seem to understand why a manufacturer would want to push it, because everyone in that room, I talked to a lot of those manufacturers, every single one of them wants to be in compliance. They want to have rules to abide by. But what everyone is worried about is if I make a compliant paddle, I fully follow the rules, but that means it's less exciting. Let's say kind of like the True Foam. It was a little less exciting than some people thought it would be, right? Because they followed the rules. What all the manufacturers are worried about is they're going to follow the rules. Someone's going to skirt the rules with a break-in, exceed the limit, and they will lose millions of dollars to them because they've got the hottest legal paddle, even though it's technically out of the bounds of the rules because maybe they did something with break-in. That's what they're all worried about, because it's going, why am I going to sit here and stay compliant when everyone wants that paddle that you guys aren't catching and doing your job for?
Right.
That's everyone's complaint. But they all want to know a limit to stay under.
But then also those people who make those paddles that are out of compliance, hot and exciting, will sell a ton. I don't feel like they really want that either, because then that's going to get it delisted. It's going to make the consumers unhappy because now this new expensive paddle they bought is going to be worthless to an extent. And then it's just not good. None of this is good for any party.
Definitely not good for anyone. But if you are one of these manufacturers, let's just say you've got a company that just wanted to be super shady. And manufacturers in the room use this example.
Yeah.
What if a company goes and makes $30 million from a release, and then it takes a year for USAP to catch it? They made $30 million. You slap them on the wrist and delist that thing, you didn't hurt them that bad, especially if that company says, you know what? This paddle was, they don't have to do returns.
Right.
They don't have to do that. So they could walk away with $30 million. It's like, cool.
If a company wanted a bad reputation just to make money and get out, it's the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, and they just didn't seem to understand that. Well, everyone in the room also understood that, is what it felt like. Right. So that was kind of the biggest argument, was just around this degradation testing. We spent a lot of time on it. I mean, this was supposed to be 4 hours.
Kind of like the biggest issue, at least that I see with paddles right now.
Yeah. And it ended up being, instead of 4 hours, it was more like 6. Ooh. And we spent probably an hour and a half just on circles of degradation testing. One thing they did say that I thought was interesting, and I didn't know this.
Yeah.
USAP said in the meeting that when a paddle tests within the top 10% of testing at element, I assume that means if they're within 10% of the upper limit, is how I interpret that they will go and source more of those paddles to check compliance. So basically saying, if you're hot, we're going to make sure that another paddle didn't exceed it. If you're right at the ceiling, we want to make sure you didn't go over and just cross the line. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, that was just kind of interesting. All right. That was most of what I'm going to go into for the USAP meeting for right now.
What about the note that's right above that 10%?
I will come back to that because it will be relevant for the Ripple.
One thing real quick I want to talk about, it's interesting to me that just hearing this is, what I don't like that much is that I hear a lot of people voicing some issues and them not being very receptive to it. What happens when, like, technology changes very quickly? We've seen that. New technology is going to come out. There's going to be new issues with it. And USAP does not seem very receptive to finding new ways to solve those problems.
Right.
And so we're just going to be in this cat and mouse game of, like, changing technology, new problems arise, and it's going to be very slow to come up with, like, if they just believe PBCoR is the way, this is it. But now there's these new problems.
Yeah.
PBCoR isn't right to fix those problems. It's going to take forever to fix that. I don't like that they're at least not even receptive to any of these issues.
Yeah. One thing that we did, USAP did agree with this. I don't know if they will implement it or when they will implement it, which I guess we'll get to in a minute. But basically, if you misrepresent the seal, or let's say you had a delisting, there should be a fine, like a large fine, or maybe if you have too many of these, you got caught too many times, you're just suspended. You can't produce USAP approved paddles anymore. You're off. And to me, that would be
blacklisted.
That would be such a deterrent, because you don't want to get suspended. So you're not even going to push it. And right now there is no punishment other than a delisting. So everyone, and USAP, to their credit, did seem to agree, like, yeah, maybe we should implement a fine system or a suspension or something. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Would be more protection. Okay. Let's get to the Ripple, because this was the hot
I've gotten a lot of questions about this one.
Yeah. Okay. First, a basic thing we need to get out of the way. The Ripple was not delisted. There's some terminology here that I think is important. Yep. This was not a delisting. There is a Ripple that is currently approved and in the USAP database, but that one has ridges, and occasionally in tournaments it gets caught for, it shouldn't have that. So anyways, that one's kind of weird. But the paddle that was about to come out is different from that beta paddle. There have been changes made to it, and it just failed the certification testing. So it never got a stamp of approval and then delisted. Delisted is when it had the stamp, it got approved, and then it gets pulled certification. That's not what happened here. It just failed. It's like if I submitted a brand new paddle and they just failed it. Yep. It wasn't a delisting, it just failed testing.
Right.
Okay.
It was never available to the public.
Bingo. Okay, I'm going to read two statements here.
Okay.
USAP made a statement, and we all told them they should have done this from the beginning. We should have heard from them the day this happened. They did it a few days late, but props to them for doing it. Here's USAP's statement regarding the issue. USA Pickleball is committed to upholding the integrity of paddle certification through rigorous, standardized testing procedures to ensure fair play and compliance with established performance thresholds. Regarding the certification status of the Ronbus Ripple R1.14 PBCoR.43, because that's how they're identifying this model, because it had the PBCoR stamp. Paddles initially provided for PBCoR testing were beta samples, not final production samples. USA Pickleball received no production samples for certification until explicitly requested. As a result, the Ripple R1.14 PBCoR.143 paddle has not been fully certified by USA Pickleball and and should not be represented as such. While Ronbus has conducted internal testing and seeded prototype models with influencers and paddle reviewers, these beta units do not constitute fully certified products. USA Pickleball's independent testing, conducted in partnership with Element Space and Defense, revealed that the production paddles submitted for final certification did not pass PBCoR testing. Reviewers and consumers should be aware that any prototype or pre-certification product should not display the USA Pickleball approved seal unless it has successfully completed the full suite of certification tests. USA Pickleball remains committed to working with manufacturers to ensure fair and transparent testing protocols, and any paddle seeking full certification must pass all required tests before being officially listed on the USA Pickleball website as an approved product. Here's Ronbus' statement, which is a little bit different from USAP's. We are extremely disappointed to announce that the release of the Ripple on January 31st, 2025 has been delayed once again. The Ripple.R1.14 and pre-production PBCoR.43 version have passed all of the previous testing with the PBCoR measurement below the 0.43 threshold, and we received written confirmation of this. However, we were asked earlier this week to submit more production models for a full testing of the R1.14 PBCoR 43 as a separate new paddle submission. The paddles were overnighted and immediately tested, but showed very different results of PBCoR measurements above 0.44. We are launching a thorough investigation to determine the cause of these discrepancies. We will be testing the same paddle using our own PBCoR test machine at the factory lab, using all the test results we have received point by point. It is our goal to work with USAP to ultimately release a fully approved Ripple paddle that is unmatched in both performance and technology. Despite the setback, we will continue to push forward to release an approved Ripple at a later date and appreciate your support and patience. Let me get a drink of water quick.
Yeah.
That's so much talking.
I like how they really had to throw in that little bit of marketing terminology there at the end.
Which part?
In unmatched in both performance and technology. Just had to slip that in.
True. Okay.
I just think it's funny.
What's interesting is when this news broke, no one really knew what happened because it kind of came from Ronbus first in their Discord, then it leaked out, then there was more confirmation.
It's been all over the place. It's really confusing, to be honest.
It's very confusing. So when this news first came out, there were a handful of people that were really up in arms. We're going, oh, all these stupid influencers, these stupid reviewers got this paddle delisted. It's all their fault. They were talking about it being too hot, blah, 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 blah. The reviewers had nothing to do with it, okay? Literally, if you read USAP's statement, they are saying that the beta sample received a PBCoR test. The one that was about to be released did not receive full certification, including PBCoR testing. One thing that is very interesting and maybe even problematic is that you can go directly to Element Space and Defense and get a PBCoR test done. So I could take, let's say I made a Chris Olsen muffin approved paddle. I take that and I want to know how it tests. I can take that directly to Element Space and Defense and say, hey, test this for me. I will pay you money. Give me the PBCoR number. Cool. Let's say it was 0.42. I now have written confirmation from Element Space and Defense that I passed PBCoR. That doesn't mean anything unless you send it through USAP to get that testing done.
Right.
And my understanding reading this statement, and it's a lot, so I could be slightly off here, is that Ronbus engaged directly with Element Space and Defense, got the written confirmation, but it did not receive the full certification of all the tests through USAP. So it seems like there was a bit of assumptions made that since Element said it was good, that they were just good to proceed. So when Ronbus announced this latest date, it seems like USAP was completely unaware that they were moving forward with a full launch. And then when they figured it out, they went, whoa, 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 whoa. You haven't actually certified the paddle that you're about to release with that stamp on it. We need to test that. So send us that paddle. Ran it through all their tests, and then it failed testing.
Got it.
Now,
timeline on this is all very important.
Timeline is very important. And also, it's very confusing because the only people who actually know every unit that has been tested is Dong at Ronbus and USAP. And even USAP, it's questionable.
One thing I'm also confused about is Dong in his message says that they have their own lab and a manufacturer with PBCoR test machine. They do it there. But then he also just went straight to this space and defense or Element Space and Defense organization to test it. Why skip USAP?
Well,
if you're not trying to do anything shady.
I don't think anything shady was attempted to be done there. I think there was the assumption that since Element Space and Defense is doing the test, if they gave me the written confirmation that it passes, why do I need to do the same thing but add a middleman?
I
think there was a bit of a miscommunication with USAP and Ronbus in that aspect. Something was not communicated properly.
I think it's just implied. In the way I see it, where I stand, it's implied that you have to go through the company that you're putting their stamp on your paddle to get it certified.
Agreed.
Like if I have a car and I need it to get emissions tested to be legal in this state, and I can go to the DMV, the government, to go get it tested, then they'll approve my car for emissions. But this auto body shop just down the street says, hey, we do that same test and we'll get it tested and tell you. That does not mean that my car is legal and emissions tested just because this auto body shop has the same thing and can tell me that it's legal.
Right.
It's not stamped.
What I feel like should happen is that companies probably shouldn't, I don't want to say shouldn't, because I think it's useful to be able to go directly to Element to test and find out if you're in the ballpark, because you're not trying to certify. You just want to know, am I even close to PBCoR? If I'm not.
I think that's a useful tool.
Yeah.
But I think it's implied that you have to go through the organization that you are putting their stamp on your paddle to be certified.
Right.
I just think that where maybe it's different, maybe he sees it differently, but I think that is very clearly implied.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Something got mixed up there for sure. So, man, this is so much to unpack.
It's a lot, man. I'm trying to think back through all of it, and it's so much.
Yeah, again, really the only two people who know with 100% confidence is Ronbus and USAP. Everyone else kind of has to piece this together from what everyone was said.
So real quick, just for the consumer's sake at the moment, you and I have received 3 different versions of the Ripple. We received a beta version with these weird waves in the face that has no stamp.
My understanding is that is the one that is
the
approved.
Only one that has actually received an approval.
Yes.
Then we received a second one that hit like a cannon, was completely different. That one never got approved, right? So that one's different. Then are the reviewers the only ones who received those models?
I don't know if the Connect group got to purchase those or not.
See, because that's where I would be a little concerned and confused. Because if the very first beta one got approved, but then there's no way to distinguish the second model that we received if Connect members were able to get that, and those are out in the wild, that's what concerns me, because those were wildly different than the third version with the PBCoR stamp that failed testing, that is not approved. So how can a consumer, if someone is buying a paddle from say you and I see you selling a Ripple on Facebook, it does not have the PBCoR stamp. So I think that is a legal paddle. Is there any way to distinguish the beta versus the what we call release or production version?
I'm glad you asked this question because it got brought up in the meeting. I'm just going to try and read this word for word because I have it written here.
Yeah.
Basically, when asked, what can the consumer do in terms of due diligence to know that they are safe? They responded, consumers should use the database as a way to know that a paddle is approved. And every single person in the room started trying to talk and went, that paddle is literally on your database. And they said, yeah, but it's not the one with the PBCoR stamp. Well, how is the consumer supposed to know that? You think the consumer's keeping up with what PBCoR stamp is? That alone is confusing in itself. And then I argued, I said, the paddles on the approved list and the ones that were about to come out are identical in shape, visually, there is nothing
aesthetics.
Yeah, there's nothing that sets them apart other than that stamp. And the consumer doesn't even know about this database tool.
Yeah.
So to expect them to go find that, and then it's not even true that what was about to come out is the same as what's approved. The amount of confusion in there is asinine.
Right. Especially if you're new to the sport and you're getting into it and all you hear your friends talk about, oh man, the Ripple this, Ripple that. how is someone new gonna? I mean, we do this for a living, and it's confusing to us. How is
Yeah.
someone new getting into it who just hears from other people say the ripple's amazing gonna understand? Oh, now I'm in trouble because I have the wrong ripple. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it's very hard for everyone. I mean, I have all the models, and I've literally had to start sharpieing them to know which one's which.
Yeah.
Because outside of the one that has the waves in the face,
You can't tell.
like you can tell when you hit them, but I'm like, I gotta know visually which one's which. Let me read through my notes again here.
Yep. I just find it very frustrating. And I think it's interesting that USAP, again, I don't mean this as a criticism, is just like, this is your responsibility. This is your responsibility. Like, this is the consumer's responsibility to figure this out, or it's the manufacturer's responsibility to stay in compliance with this. It's like, so nothing is USAP's responsibility?
Right. All right, so let me see here. Yeah, I mean, I think that's most of kind of how that went with the ripple. It's a mess. I don't even know if USAP is aware of how many different versions are out in the wild that people are playing with at tournaments.
Yeah, sorry to talk over you. That was going to be my other concern is like, does USAP know how many versions there are of this thing? Probably not.
I don't think they do. And the beta one that was approved, the one that kind of has the waves in the face, I know and have heard at tournaments that one's being pulled because it has the waves that it's not supposed to have. So the one that's approved is problematic in that way. So I don't know. It's a mess. I mean, you could show up. I can pretty much guarantee you that I could show up to a APP tournament right now with a ripple, not the one that has the PBCoR 43 certified stamp on it. Show up, and as long as it doesn't have those waves in it, how are they going to tell me I can't use it? What if I took the one that was an absolute cannon that is different internally? The ref has no way of knowing.
Right.
It's just a disaster in that way.
Very confusing. Like, at the moment, again, could make the Pickleball Studio Muffin Monster and throw it out there with it. Like, you can ask a manufacturer, hey, throw the PBCoR stamp on there, and then just send it out in the market. How's a consumer going to know that that's not legal? No one is going to look at that and go, I didn't see this on the USAP database. I don't think this paddle's legal. No one's doing that.
And that's why I think there needs to be harsh punishment for misusing it. If you put that stamp on there and it never approved certification, USAP should be handing out some kind of punishment or strike system, because then it deters you from doing that.
Right.
I won't put that in the wild unless I know I've got the paper. And all of this, what all of this media day really taught me is that moving forward with some of these reviews, I may just start asking companies, look, you're going to have to provide me with the certification document so that I believe that you actually did your homework. If I'm going to talk about this paddle and potentially say it's a great paddle, prove to me that you did all of the steps, because I don't want to find out later that you lied to me. USAP has problems with this, and then the consumer has to return.
Because then it tarnishes your reputation. Because then it's like, then everyone's like, well, you told me to buy this paddle. You said it was amazing. How did you not know that this was never approved or legal? Now I just spent $300 on a paddle that is a paperweight.
Yep.
Right? So, and now a question I have is, if USAP is saying, hey, you need to have this stamp, all that stuff, and now like we can throw any paddle we want out there. Is USAP looking out in the market for paddles that aren't approved? Are they actively trying to figure that out? Because how are they?
They actually are.
Okay, they are. Okay,
they said they're starting to do that.
Good. Because if they weren't, I was gonna say that would be a big problem. But I'm glad to hear that is something they're doing, because again, what's stopping me from just throwing it out there and then just never getting caught? But I'm glad to hear that they are.
Yeah, they did say they're working on that.
Nice.
The last thing I want to go over in regards to this whole thing, because again, everyone. Why do I keep saying everyone too? My language is
just
broken
another habit.
Yeah, it's so stupid. There are a number of people who are going, oh man, these reviewers like think they should be in charge of paddle testing. Look, none of us want to be in charge of it. In fact, every single time that I have to say I think there's a problem with a paddle that USAP missed, I despise that I have to say that.
Right.
Because by the time it hits my doorstep, I shouldn't have to question anything. Everything should be legal. Nothing should be weird. There should be no higher grit. There shouldn't
have to think about it at all.
Yeah, literally shouldn't have to cross my mind. But I say these things because with the Gen 3 being delisted, I feel that there is a responsibility now that since USAP is lacking in certain areas, that if I see something that feels way out of the norm, like the Ripple, then I'm going to say that and question to USAP, what happened here? How is this legal?
Through?
Like, what is going on? And if they tell me everything is fine, fully passed tests, good to go, like you can't say it's illegal, that's fine by me. I don't really care. What I don't want to have happen for the Ripple, as a great example, is the performance of that paddle is exceptionally good. It's a harder paddle to use, but objectively, spin is amazing. Power is awesome. Like, it hits all these benchmarks. So if you tell me it's good to go, I'm going to tell people it's awesome. But what I don't want to have happen is tell everyone it's awesome, and then USAP goes, that was too hot. Let's pull that thing. You know what? I don't want people to have to deal with what we dealt with the Gen 3. That's why I think you hear all these reviewers throw off these siren bells, is we want to protect the consumer from that happening. I don't really care if a paddle hits hard. If it is actually legal and did all the tests, whatever. It is what it is.
Good job. You like good technology.
Yeah.
Cool.
Maybe I don't love that the game's getting that fast, but ultimately I don't care. If it passed, it passed. Problem is when there's this sketchy stuff and we don't know.
Right.
So that's why I think a lot of the reviewers throw off these warnings. Like I said, well-intentioned people think they've got smart people, but there's things that they're blinded to that they need, in my opinion, need to take a very serious look at, that I think are important things to continue growing this. And you know what? Maybe it's not even degradation testing. Maybe it just becomes as simple as a very effective punishment, suspension, fine system, because you probably will get caught. People are going to talk about something being hot. It's probably going to get on USAP's radar to take another look at. And if you know you're getting fined $500,000, or you've got strike one towards your suspension, and maybe it's 2 strikes and you're out, or 3 strikes and you're out, are you really going to push it? You probably don't want to push it because there's a lot of money at stake now.
Right.
So maybe you don't need degradation testing if you put harsh enough punishments in. Why you really going to push? You really want to play dumb games and find out? Probably not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, that's a good way to solve that issue, because the second it happens to one company and they get caught and they either, like you said, $500,000 fine or some form of suspension, like year suspension or something, that's going to put the fear of God in all these other companies and go, okay, we got to really take a closer look at all of our paddles.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what continues to happen. We may have more USAP updates at some point. Like I said, I'm probably going to go through my footage, but I think really the important aspects were the degradation testing and conversations about the Ripple. And one thing I really wish I had asked that I didn't get, I just didn't think to ask when I was there, is I would have loved to talk more about their communication, because manufacturers, everyone in that room doesn't think USAP communicates very well. Manufacturers in my Discord think they don't communicate well. And I almost got this impression that was, well, if you guys see a problem, just talk to us. And everyone's that I know of goes, we can't get a hold of you, so how does that help us?
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know. That's, I guess, really all I have to say on the USAP testing.
Do you think it's just a lack of team members, like just not enough people to keep up with everything because there are so many
I think that is what it is. Because there's something around 1,800. That's a lot of people.
Insane.
That is a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, to cut them some slack, keeping up with that is borderline impossible.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You know, you either need more people, or you got to find a way to limit how many manufacturers there are. Maybe that's through higher testing fees so that we don't have some of these issues. I don't know. It's a lot. But all right, moving on.
That was so much to unpack and
there's a
think
chance.
about.
There's a chance we even just split that USAP section into 2 pods or something. I don't know. It was long. But all right, made it to the kitchen. Made it to the kitchen this far, and we decided not to split this into 2 pods. Congrats.
If
You're a real one.
If you haven't fallen asleep yet, wake up. That was a lot.
Yeah. So let's talk about the break here. So
yeah,
I mean, sure, we did very different things. I mean, it's
probably pretty boring for a lot of people. I just worked on some health stuff. I said I have some time. I need to, figure out what's going on with my body. So I've been seeing a lot of doctors. So I took a lot of time to do that. I've found some new hobbies I've really been enjoying. Shout out to Alex Vanover for getting me started and helping with FPV. For those of you who don't know, that's first person view for drones. It's been a huge hobby of mine. I've having a lot of fun with that, shooting some really cool footage. So I've spent a lot of time researching, practicing, doing all that. And so honestly, not much pickleball. The back half of January is when I started playing pickleball again and getting into it because we had a tournament and then just getting ready to get back into the groove of things. Other than that, that's about it. Just been nice, relaxing mental break.
Yeah, for sure. So similar for me for the first week, I went, okay, we're going to go just full relax mode. I realized that is so hard for me. I mean, I told Sarah this. The first couple days, I would wake up and I'd go, okay, what am I going to do? I go, I'll go to my computer. I go to my computer and I would open Discord. And then I'd go, why are you opening Discord? You only open Discord for work. So I go, okay, close that. Then I'd open my email and I go, why do you open your email? You open it for work. Okay, close that. Then I'd open YouTube and I'd go to find a pickleball podcast and I go, why are you pulling that up? You do that for work. And I just went down the list of everything I wanted to do. My computer was work related. So then I'd sit there and go, what are you gonna go do?
Need some hobbies.
Well, so here's the thing. I did play a good amount of video games, probably more video games than I've played in a minute. And then at a certain point, I just went, I don't need to play this much. Like I'm bored of this now. Like I don't need to play this many video games. So, similar, I did work on some health stuff I was working on. I bought some fitness equipment to continue working on my health throughout the year so that I don't have back problems like I did. I did some PT visits. So first 2 weeks, honestly, kind of boring. I didn't do much. It was kind of hard to relax. Eventually, I figured it out. Then the second half, we all went to Hawaii. We were in Hawaii for a week. So me and Sarah took a vacation just ourselves for 2 days. Spend time together. And then the rest of you showed up. So we had a big pickleball group. We had 7 of us.
Yep.
Just all pickleball friends. Half the goal was there was a tournament in Hawaii. So we were going to play one day. And the rest of the day was just exploring to be a tourist.
Yep.
So we'll go over the tournament. Had a great time at the tournament.
Yeah.
It was fun. We all played the pro division because there was no 5-0 division. So there was 4-5, then pro. And 4-5 was also on a day that I couldn't play. So that's another reason I did the pro division. And basically how they did it was pool play. They split us into 3 pools, and then only the top 2 teams in each pool made it out. And I think there were 5 or 6 teams in each pool.
Yeah, I had 6 teams.
So I played with someone I hadn't played before because we had an odd number in our group. So I said, I'll go find someone. You guys just play amongst each other. I played with a guy named Ray. He was great. I met him last year.
Super nice guy. Yeah. We had a great conversation. Really nice. Awesome guy. Good player.
Yeah, he's a great player. I loved playing with him. The vibes were awesome. And that, to me, is the most important part. If I'm going to play with a random person, I want you to be a fine enough player, but I'd rather you just not be a jerk.
Right. Yeah.
And this guy was above and beyond. He was amazing.
Yeah.
So in pool play, when we played together, we ended up going 2-3 in pool. We definitely could have went 3-2, but I choked so hard in our first match. We were up 12-7 in a game to 15, and they just kept driving the ball at me, and I popped it up, shake and bake. I choked that game. That one was all my fault. That one was within realm of winning. We lost 13-15. But it was a good match. I really enjoyed that one. Then the other 2 matches we lost were to people who went on to the bronze medal match, and there was 0. I don't care what world it is. If I played lights out best pickleball of my life, I was never beating these people.
Yeah.
I think I lost 2-15 and 4-15.
Ooh.
Got absolutely beat down.
Dang,
so
that 13-year-old mess you up. Tama just
going
crazy.
He put me in my place real quick. But that was my pool play experience. It was fine. I had a great time with a partner. How about you?
So first of all, super fun event. I had a great time. Weather was amazing. The event ran really well, really smoothly. The only thing that this is kind of hard to control was a little goofy was the text system and the tournament desk was a little out of sync. So I would get a text, be like, oh, I got to go get to my court. So I go up to the desk to get the ball in the basket. And they say, we haven't called you yet. I'm like, well, I just got a text.
Yeah.
So now what you're saying is the text is worthless and I have to listen to a speaker that's really far away and it's really loud.
It's hard to hear sometimes.
And so sometimes I get a little confused. I might be a little late to the basket. And so that was the only thing. But technology sometimes just has issues. I get it. That's hard to control. So I'm not going to put any blame on them for that. Everything else was great. They had water everywhere, ice. It was
energy drinks.
They had energy drinks. They had Element, which is huge. I think the event ran really well. The courts were nice. Everyone was super nice. Great event.
Vibes of the tournament were awesome.
The vibes of the tournament were amazing. My pool, this is really funny. The very first team I play, and it just wouldn't be a tournament without this happening to someone.
Yeah.
Especially when you travel with a group. Very first team I play, 2 other people in our group. So
Yeah.
like, great. I travel literally as far across the country as I possibly can to just go play 2 people I play with all day, every day.
Yeah.
So I thought that was hilarious. So played two friends of mine, won that match. That was a good match. Then I had two of some of the best teams in the tournament. The number 1 seeded team was in our pool. They ended up winning the gold medal of the tournament. Great players. Kevin Wong, not Dong, because they're 2 different people. Kevin Wong and then Riley. I can't remember your last name. I'm sorry. Phenomenal players. Great match. My partner and I started up. We were it was 9-2. And something else clicked and they just rocked us. They just came back and just smoked us. So a little disappointed about that. We ended up going 3-2. And yeah, just there was a ton of great players. Everyone was super nice.
And to make it out of pool, you had to go 4-1 or 5-0.
Yeah, exactly.
In all the pools, that's how it
so
went.
that last match I played, it was to make it or lose it. And unfortunately, we lost it 15-9. It was a great match. Phenomenal players. They were just better than us. They deserved to win it. A little disappointed. I definitely could have played better. But overall, I have no complaints about the tournament. I think it was great. Actually, one teeny tiny thing, and this is partially my own fault. I would have just liked to see some more food.
Oh, sure.
But that's it.
Yeah, for sure. It was good. And one of our friends, she played women's pro, had someone she hadn't played with before and got second. So that was fun.
Yep, that was really cool.
Yeah. But yeah, great tournament. Big shout out to Nikki, who was running the tournament. He helped us get some games afterwards and was super accommodating. The people in Hawaii are always very hospitable.
Mm-hmm.
But he was very helpful.
Everyone was super nice.
Yeah, you actually got sick and a bunch of people from the tournament helped.
Yeah, I think more people came to help than needed. But yeah, I got pretty sick. I got super lightheaded after a match. Terrible headache, and then I got extremely nauseous. I actually stood up to go get some food and then kind of hit the ground and was just laying there. Thought I was going to throw up, and just a bunch of people came to help. So thank you to everybody who came to help support me and, help me get better. Yeah, it's just people are super nice out there. Great. Highly recommend it. If you're ever able to go to Hawaii and play a tournament, highly recommend it.
Yeah, agree. So, all right, after Hawaii, you went home. I was home for about a little over 24 hours, and then I went to Florida.
Yeah, you were in and out.
Yeah, real quick, in and out. Went to Florida, played a bunch of pickleball, got to see Doug from Bread and Butter. That was a bunch of fun.
Yeah.
I hadn't really gotten to play with him much, kind of seen it, but he's just a hilarious guy. We actually did a podcast, so if you guys want to see that podcast, I'll leave it linked down in the description. It's a much more chill, behind-the-scenes podcast. You'll probably learn some stuff about me that you guys may not have known. We talk about pickleball, but pickleball was not really the
gear
focus.
Focused.
Yeah, definitely not gear focused. So, link in the description if you want to check that out. But I had a great time in Florida, and that trip was for sure the most relaxing part of the month for me. And I think it was because I was doing some work. I was working on the Carbon True Foam, but I got to play pickleball in groups that I'd never played with before. And one of the days, we even just showed up at a public park and just played. I didn't care who I was playing with. I wasn't looking for good games. I just said, I'm going to show up and play. And had a great time. Actually, there were some people that recognized me. It was very funny. I walked onto the court and this one person turns around and goes, "Wait, is your name Chris?" And I went, "Yeah." And she just, it was a very funny reaction. I'm completely blanking on her name, but I believe her husband's name was Jesse. So sorry, I forgot your name. But they were great to play with. We played some mixed games, played some men's games. It was a lot of fun. I'm realizing more and more one of my favorite things in pickleball is being able to travel to these different states and meet all these different people, whether they're a higher level player or not. It's just a lot of fun.
That's a big reason why I like traveling for tournaments.
Yeah.
Is just getting to play different people and meet people. I think it's so much fun to get to talk. I mean, obviously, both you and I are very outgoing social people. And so I just really enjoy getting to meet and talk people. I think it's one of my favorite things is asking people how they got into pickleball. Because everyone has there's a lot of it is similar, but you meet a lot of people have unique stories. I think it's really cool.
For sure. So I really enjoyed that. It kind of just grounded me and reminded me that, okay, yes, there's all this drama in pickleball. There's these paddles delistings, these pro things, whatever. just reminded me, here's the thing that actually matters in pickleball. Here's why you got into this. Here's why you enjoy this. Like, keep reminding yourself that this is the important thing, and these are the people you're trying to speak to and help. It was really good. So really appreciated that trip. That was awesome. Then when I went to the USAP Media Day, I also got to go to the Yola headquarters and see kind of what was going on over there, just because headquarters were close. So extended my flight out, got to hang out with them and see what's going on. That was a lot of fun. I'll own up to it. I'll say it publicly. I played Richard, who I believe is the CEO of the company, in singles. I did lose. Richard he's a good doubles player, and he's also a good singles player. But I want to rematch Richard. I want a 2 out of 3. I'll be back.
He's going to be using this whole travel excuse. He's been traveling,
Yeah, who, me or him?
No, you.
Oh, me.
He's at his headquarters. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, he did just get back from travel too.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a great time. So anyways,
nice.
Break was very refreshing. I'm back. I'm ready to make content. I was ready to make content before the break.
You
was
were
even
so
over.
ready, eager to get back on it. I mean, I was excited to start, like, once I started hitting again, these new paddles, like, I was definitely getting excited and ready to start doing it. And one really cool thing is I definitely got a lot of nice messages from people, like, saying, hey, love your work, would like, ready for you to get back. And then I actually had a few people come up to me in person at some facilities here. One really nice guy came up to me and was like, hey, love what you do. First thing I want to say is never take that break again. And so it's just really nice to see people excited for, like, that they care about, our work. And so it just makes it even more exciting for us to get back to it. So I love this, and I'm ready to start.
Yeah.
Excited to start doing it all again.
For sure. So, all right, we're back, guys. There's the podcast. No idea if this got split into 1 or 2 episodes, but thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
See you later.